For recording?
Yep.
Okay, well, today's date is October 22nd, 2024. We are reconvening in the investigatory hearing. I mentioned earlier that we would select a second date if needed. So everybody be thinking about that. We'll get to that here in just a little bit, but we'll see if we can move through all of this today that we have scheduled. With that, we would call Kristen Pappas. I'll have you take our oath. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give the commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Before we begin, can someone close that? I just don't want staff coming in and out. Thank you.
So can you tell us your name and spell your last name for the record?
It's Kristen Pappas, Pappas.
All right, and how are you involved in the alcoholic beverage industry that brought you here today?
I am the office girl for Copper Mountain Beverage.
Okay.
And I did Rhodes Beverage and the transportation part of it too.
Okay, did you work one and then the next or both simultaneously or?
The transportation piece always kind of went along with the beverage part of it. We didn't really, I kind of took over the Copper Mountain part as Rhodes Beverage closed and we got a little bit smaller. Then I took more Copper Mountain as far as ordering and emails and stuff like that.
So let's go through one piece at a time, because it sounds like you've had multiple roles. With Rhodes Beverage, what would you describe as your role?
Orders, invoicing, answering the phones, payroll, just general admin stuff.
Okay, but you would take orders from retailers that called
Yes,
rather than place it with a salesman?
yes. If they would call or email the office directly, otherwise I would take the orders from, our salespeople, process those invoices, work out the routes, that kind of stuff.
Did you do work for Wabash Valley?
No,
Okay. And what was your role then with?
I take that back. I did do some Wabash Valley stuff, but it was mostly just like filing paperwork. I wasn't involved necessarily in how any of it was working.
What do you mean filing paper?
Like, here's these invoices, or here's a purchase order for.
Oh, literally filing?
Literally you're filing. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Not filing with Department of Revenue or?
None of that.
So then what is your role with Copper Mountain?
The admin stuff. I do file all the excise taxes across to wherever they need to be filed, payroll, that kind of stuff.
Are you familiar with the relationships on manufacturing and wholesaling the product through different states?
As far as how my relationship with those other wholesalers, or as far as like the legal aspect of it?
Just your relationship with those wholesalers?
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they would email me directly or call me.
So are you familiar with D&E Spirits?
Yes.
Okay. If D&E Spirits needs an order for Copper Mountain, do they contact you or someone else with Copper Mountain or Best?
I am normally the last one on that list.
Okay.
It's a Dale, Lance, Wilbert situation. I mean, here's a bill to pay. Here's the receipt for the bottles I ordered. I'm not really, when the freight company was still in business, one of these guys would call and go, hey, I need this picked up. And I'd be like, oh, we can do it this day. And I would plan the logistics of that.
What freight company is that?
Classic Transportation,
Okay. Who owns Classic Transportation?
Lansted.
Okay.
We closed that in late spring.
Okay, we heard earlier that the driver was the same for the new company. Do you know if there was any transition to a new company, even if it's not owned by Lance?
I don't, there's only one driver I can think of, and he wasn't driving for us anymore and really didn't have a role on the Copper Mountain Classic side of things. He was fully licensed. But he was really only working part-time for us, and he was also working, and he wasn't even working for us at that point. It just kind of phased out, but he was helping Dale. So I'm assuming that's the driver.
Okay,
Because I had other drivers, so I would schedule the people I had on payroll. I didn't normally use that guy.
okay.
As for what's happening now, I have not been asked to schedule freight for anything, so I have no idea.
When was the last time you were asked to schedule freight?
Probably April.
Okay, so I guess then let's talk about before April.
Okay.
How would you become aware that something needed to be scheduled?
One of these guys would call me or text me and say, hey, this is ready, pick it up.
One of these guys.
Either Wilbert or Dale,
And then you would arrange the truck to pick it up and take it from Best to D&E Spirits?
Yes, whatever day we were, next available day.
And
I'd get a
who
driver.
paid the trucking company for that
Copper Mountain,
shipment?
because it was Copper Mountain product.
Okay, so Copper Mountain paid for the transportation.
Mm-hmm.
Was the trucking company involved at all after it left D&E Spirits?
No,
Okay, were you transporting things anywhere else in Indiana other than, okay, let me be clear. Were you taking anything from Best to any other locations in Indiana besides D&E Spirits?
not that I'm aware of.
For Copper Mountain, what is Copper Mountain's relationship, to your knowledge, with Best?
Makes the product.
Okay, and then does any money flow from Copper Mountain to Best?
Not that I can recall.
Okay, and then does any money flow from? I guess we'll just go through everything.
Well, aside from this
From-
export situation, I mean, that money will go directly from Copper Mountain to Best. Because D&E is not involved in that.
On the foreign shipment or the overseas shipment, okay. Does any money go from D&E Spirits to Copper Mountain?
Yes, because we pay storage fees.
Wait, so money goes from,
Copper Mountain pays
Copper Mountain.
D&E for storage.
okay. And then who pays Copper Mountain for the product?
The wholesaler that it is sold to, or the distributor it is sold to.
So it's housed at D&E, but the payment eventually to Copper Mountain comes from.
So if Copper Mountain gets an order from the Indiana, which is Crossroads Vintners, by the way. If Crossroads places an order, I confirm inventory with Dale, it gets picked up at D&E. I generate an invoice. For most of the time, I will generate an invoice and send it to Dale so that he's got it, so it's available when the product is picked up by either the guys in Wisconsin or Tennessee or whatever. That doesn't always happen, and I can email those guys directly an invoice too. But I generate the invoice and then they mail me a check. Copper Mountain a check.
So who pays best for manufacturing the product?
I'm trying, it's been several months since I've dealt with it or seen anything. No, Dale would provide me an invoice. And I would pay him for new product.
You would pay Dale.
Copper Mountain would pay D&E Spirits.
Okay. I don't know.
Okay. So, if Best, if I understand this correctly, produces 100 cases for Copper Mountain,
Mm-hmm.
they're shipped from Best to Copper Mountain, or they're shipped from Best to D&E.
To D&E because Copper Mountain does not have a facility here.
And who's responsible for the transportation? D&E, Copper Mountain, or Best? From Best to D&E.
Prior to, say, April, Classic Transportation, and I would schedule the freight for that. After that, I have no idea.
So Classic did the transportation. Who's responsible for?
I don't know.
Okay,
I don't know now.
well, that kills my questions.
Sorry.
Before April, who would trigger Classic to do the transportation? Who would contact you and say product needs to be transported?
Honestly, normally it was an email between Dale and Wilbert and I. Hey, this product is ready. When can you pick it up? I'd say, hey, I have a truck available this day. And Dale would say, okay, I can be there. Wilbert would say, have him call me an hour before. Dale would say, have him call me an hour before. And it was just that simple.
And following up, if that 100 cases was transported,
Mhm.
you would do the bill. Is that what I understood?
On the freight side of it,
Yeah.
Copper Mountain would pay Classic, and those were kind of internal within my own office invoices. Nobody saw those except me.
Okay. If something happened to a pallet in transportation, where would that show up on the billing process? I mean, someone's taking that loss, right?
Out of the employee's paycheck that dumped it.
What would have been after any transportation then?
But they were our employees it was,
Okay.
if Classic Transportation was transporting it, it was our drivers that were on our payroll that was transporting it.
Okay,
They very rarely, and I mean almost never, did we have any damaged product
okay,
in transport.
that's fine.
And if it was one bottle, it was like $4 worth. We're like, it's fine. Things
You
happen.
may have been here when I explained I years ago worked in a storage warehouse for IGA, and we had damage. And we'd have to take that product and we'd have to show what happened to it. Somebody ended up accounting for that somehow, right?
You find that when your own employees are hauling your freight, they're much more careful.
Okay.
I know exactly what happens when the Trader Joe's warehouse loads it wrong and it gets to us broken.
Okay,
But that's a whole different story.
okay.
Your own employees are very careful when they know
Right.
that they have to clean it up.
But things happen.
Right.
We know that.
Mhm.
Things just happen. But I'm for that. Mike, thank you.
So why does Trader Joe's product come to you?
When it did.
And it came to you because,
As Rhodes Beverage, as Lance was saying.
did I understand? Probably phrase question. Did you say that Copper Mountain would pay Dale for product?
Dale would send me an invoice for new products that were made that included a storage fee.
Dale would send it to you, not Wilbur,
Yes.
even though Wilbur's the one who made the product.
Wilbur did send me his invoices, but that money would pass through D&E in addition to storage fees.
So you pay Dale for the product and storage,
Correct.
and then Dale would pay Wilbert?
That's my understanding. I don't think Wilbert would be here if he's been getting stiffed.
Well, he was subpoenaed, so I don't think he.
I was trying to figure out how Best got paid in all this. So that answers.
Okay.
Do you handle any paperwork on the tax side for any of the product?
Yes,
Or state or federal or both?
states, all the states.
Okay, so product. Are there any state excise taxes paid by Copper Mountain in Indiana?
Yes,
And when is that? At what point in this process is that paid?
if Crossroad Ventnors picks up an order, then Copper Mountain sold that product to Crossroad Ventnors, and then it gets reported online, just like everything else. Invoice number, gallons, all of that.
And you pay taxes at that point, not just one of the informational filings.
Copper Mountain does not pay. Crossroads would pay.
Right, so you don't handle that.
As in there's not a payment due. Is that correct? We haven't sold them anything in several months. I'm trying to remember. I'd have to look at the website. I don't recall at this moment.
Okay,
I have about 15 states that I can just knock out in a couple hours, and most of them are using the same kind of platform. I don't remember.
approximately how many shipments have been made to Crossroads?
I want to say they order maybe quarterly.
How frequently are shipments going to D&E Spirits?
I don't have any knowledge of shipments after Classic stopped. I have been left out of that loop.
Okay. Before April, we'll put that caveat on there. Before April, do you know how frequently shipments were going from Best to D&E?
Not that I can recall on a frequency level.
That's fine.
Can you compare, excuse me, for us, the size of shipments that would go to Crossroads as opposed to D&E?
Crossroads would, 20, 30 cases.
Every quarter?
Yes, normally, as far as I can recall. D&E, obviously, for those shipments that are being sent out to New Jersey, which aren't necessarily D&E, however, they are going that Dale's responsible for shipping them out. Those guys are ordering in quantities to save them freight and all of that kind of stuff. So that would be more like several hundred cases.
How often? I'm ballpark.
Meh. 4 to 6 months. They would get a fairly decent order and it would last them a while once it got to their distribution warehouse.
Which was in New Jersey. Okay.
I do either.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Beck.
She released from subpoena.
Yeah.
You're free to go or stay.
Maybe I'll stay
a little bit. All right, next. Next, we will call Dale Stewart. You take our oath. You solemnly swear or affirm, as the case may be, that the testimony you're about to give to the commission will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yes.
See? And I see you took a seat at the table. I want to just admonish you that this is the commission's investigatory hearing. So can you state your name and spell your last name for the record?
Yes, it's Dale Stewart, Stewart, and I'm the owner of D&E Spirits.
All right, that was gonna be my next question, even though we've all talked about it all day. How long have you been the owner of D&E Spirits?
Since it started,
Okay.
2.5 years now, I guess.
Okay.
So originally, I think it formed in February of 2022.
And how were you employed prior to that?
I worked with Wabash Valley as a salesperson.
Okay. And can you just generally explain your experience in the wholesale industry over that amount of time?
Sure. So I originally started here in Indianapolis or Indiana as a restaurant owner. I owned the Melting Pot restaurant. Sold that, then went to work for RNDC, National Wine and Spirits at the time. Worked for RNDC, National Wine and Spirits, worked for Free Market Wine Group, went to work with Rhodes doing wine. And then eventually when Bob Kersey opened up Wabash Valley, went over on the spirit side.
What is your understanding of the three-tier system?
So supplier to a wholesaler to a retailer is my understanding.
Who was Bob Kersey? You mentioned, or we had him listed as Robert.
Yeah, Robert Kersey. So he was the owner of Wabash Valley.
Okay, and how, if you know, did he come to be the owner of Wabash Valley? What was his background?
I'm not sure how he came about it. I was approached about going to work for him. He wanted to get in the spirit industry. That was kind of my background with RNDC and that. So I went to work for him, looking at some of the brands for Copper Mountain to sell not only here locally in the state of Indiana, but then nationally. And then through my connections out in the market, I connected with Total Wine.
If you know, why did he decide to cease operations of Wabash Valley?
From my understanding, it was just becoming too much for him. I know he worked in the real estate industry as well. And I think everything going on with the investigations, accusations being made, he just felt it was time for him to get out and move on to something else.
So while you were with Wabash Valley, what products? I figure out how to not make this too large of a question. Can you tell us generally what brands you were distributing with Wabash Valley?
So most of it was Copper Mountain Beverage. We also had a brand called Salvacito, which was a tequila. And then there was a bourbon that we sold called Bell Mead. And then once Total Wine opened up, then we started doing all of Total Wine's items.
And when you say Total Wine's items, what does that mean?
I guess most of it would be their spirits or wine direct items. That they classify as wine direct or spirit direct items.
Okay. And they're a retailer, so how do they have product?
Well, that's how they list it as. I don't know who owns it, or I assume they don't because I have Deutsch, Park Street, Clay Street, Elementary, the main suppliers that I deal with. But in their particular stores, they list that as a direct wine or direct spirits.
And how, you said when Total Wine came to the market, you started doing their product.
Well, they reached out to several suppliers or distributors to talk to about carrying their brands, working with them. I was one of them through my relationship with Total Wine throughout other states that I've worked with. And at the end of the day, they decided to go with us. I'm sure it's probably a combination of we offered them the better price. We would charge the least to do our markup for the products. because we saw it as another source of revenue.
So the decision to use Wabash Valley as a wholesaler came from the retail level.
No, ultimately came from Deutsch and Park Street and Clay Street, as far as making the decision. They reached out initially and said that we have a license here. We would like to look at doing business. We have these brands. Would you be interested in moving and clearing them for us?
So who contacted you first, Total Line or?
Deutsch originally.
Um. Why was I'll start a different question. Did you start carrying those brands before Total Line opened their first store here?
No.
Did there come a time when Wabash Valley started receiving requests for those products from other retailers?
Yes,
Were those products listed on the price sheet?
yes.
How did you handle the requests for those products from other retailers?
It came down to initially trying to understand the way we read the statute and talking to council, when it talks about, everything has to be equal amongst all your existing customers. We looked at what exactly constituted an existing customer, and everything we could find by statute and law stated that a customer that had purchased from you within the last 30 days, this constitutes a customer. Therefore, that's where we were in discussion with ATC and Josh to try to determine exactly how that meant and what that. So one of the emails that I sent back was, unfortunately, we're in discussion with the ATC, I believe it was to Big Red, and that's the reason why. So at that point, we weren't selling any product until we got clarification as to what the commission and what ATC established as an existing customer or a new customer.
Did Wabash Valley sell any products before Total Line opened their first Indiana location?
Yes. Yeah. So we sold some wine to Big Red, as well as a couple other products. We were doing some clearing for Big Red, down through Cardinal Spirits. So Matt would contact us and say, hey, I need X amount of cases of Cardinal Spirits, Then he would also email Cardinal Spirits and say, we need X amount of cases. We would send a truck down to pick it up, come up to our location, clear it, then take it over to Matt's warehouse or Big Red.
Did Wabash Valley have contracts with the suppliers they were working with?
The only contract, and I don't know if I'd call it a contract, was a territorial agreement that Deutsch had put into place. But that was the only one that was, as far as I know, was what would you call a contract? Otherwise, there were no existing contracts.
And if you know, is that a contract that Wabash Valley signed and agreed to and is documented in such a way?
I believe so, but I can't say for sure. I do know that we at D&E do not have any contracts or no territorial agreements or anything like that in place.
So now, moving on to what made you decide to start D&E Spirits?
Really became out of a necessity that I was going to need a job because Mr. Kersley told me he was closing down Wabash. So I've been in this business for a long time. I knew a lot of the players. I saw a niche that was going to need to be filled. So I approached Deutsch and Park Street and Clay Street and said, would you look at coming to work with me if I opened up a small wholesaler here? And they agreed. And so I went ahead and got my permit and leased a space over there on 8432 East 33rd Street, about 2,700 square feet, and started business.
What was, and only because I saw this in the record on the corporation, what was University Beer Company?
So that was one probably 8 or 10 years ago. We were thinking about starting a business to go after basically creating beer for universities. So kind of like Hoosier Ale out there and things like this. And that was the original permit and everything I got 8, 10 years ago.
Who do you distribute to? As far as at the retail level?
In the state of Indiana, it's the 5 Total Wine locations are the only ones that I distribute to.
And what suppliers do you distribute for?
Deutsch, Park Street, Clay Street, and Elementary.
And how did you land on those 4 being the, suppliers that you secured before you opened your business?
Well, I knew that 3 of them were already in existence with with Total Wine. So I knew that they were going to be looking for a distributor in the state of Indiana. And so I approached them about starting up D&E Spirits, or Indiana Beverage Wholesale at the time. And then as far as the last one, Elementary, which just came on board probably in the last 6 months, I was actually contacted through Total Wine stating that they had some products and would I be interested in carrying those products from Elementary for them. And so
What is Vethos or Zethos?
I'm not familiar.
Is legal counsel able to ask a question?
Yeah, or you can suggest to us that we ask a question.
Okay, I'm just curious on the transition between names, Indiana Beverage Wholesaler. How did that become D&E Spirits?
Because there's, unbeknownst to me, there's an Indiana Beverage up in the northern region somewhere. So they had actually sent me a letter from an attorney asking me to cease and desist my name. So I just switched over to D&E Spirits.
And you know how they became aware of the similar name?
I have my suspicions, but I'm not sure.
You don't know.
Yeah.
So how does Total Wine know the products that you offer?
I send them a sheet each month, the beginning of the month, of exactly what the pricing sheet is and the quantity deal levels.
So how did they establish an initial customer relationship with you?
As far as, so I got my inventories from Deutsch and Park Street and Clay Street of all the items that they want to sell in the state of Indiana. I sent those off to, because they also included at the time some Copper Mountain products, as well as Salvacito and some of those things that I purchased to bring over to D&E from Wabash and sent those off. And then they would send me a purchase order, an order for their store. At that time, it was one store, the one on Nora location.
But prior to that first order, they had never ordered from you, correct?
Correct. So they asked to see what product book I had, if that's what your question is.
Yes.
They reached out to me, Julie Sag, who is the local purchaser here in town. She handles all the locations now, but that was her main location.
How do you know the price the manufacturer is currently charging for each product?
They will send me a list of what the pricing is. So each month I have a pricing guide that I get sent that I put together for Total Wine. It includes the excise tax. It includes guesstimated freight, not exact freight. Now, we do have monthly freight responsibilities, if you will, as far as there's some fluctuation based on gas from week to week. And then this is the price list that I send to Total Wine, saying here exactly what is available this month. Here's the cost that would be delivered to your store.
And how do you determine? I understand the freight piece, but how do you determine your markup on the product?
It's based on a per case charge. So it's not a percentage like most distributors work on.
And do you set that markup?
Yes,
Um,
because originally I had a markup at this. As we've continued, my expenses have gone up, so I've raised that amount per case that I get.
how do you determine what to order from the supplier?
So on Mondays, I receive a purchase order from Total Wine for an entire state. And in that order, I will take those orders. I will break them down by suppliers. So they'll get an email on one of the, will be a total purchase order of all the items that I want to order from Deutsch, Clay Street, Park Street. And then there's a second aggregated file in there that shows a breakdown of exactly what each store is getting of each product. So that way, when they receive it at each different supplier, it gets shipped to a central warehouse that they share not only between those four, but also probably maybe 1,000, maybe that's an exaggeration, maybe 100 other suppliers. So like Western Carriers out in New Jersey is a 2 million square foot warehouse space that has a lot of different suppliers in it. They'll send the order there. It will get picked, slatted according to each store, and then picked up on Fridays to be shipped to my location. Now that's changed because it's now coming out of Florida. So in the last 3 or 4 months, it's changed that the orders are now coming out of Florida.
For all of the suppliers?
All four of the ones that I deal with, yes.
How do you receive orders from Total Wine? And I mean, a website, an email?
Email. I get emailed to them from them. So Alex Choi is my contact out at the national level. That's where all the POs are generated at. So I've got Julie Sage here that handles if there's any issues store locally, but Alex Choi is the one who sends me the orders on Monday morning for the following Monday.
Do you ever solicit orders from Total Wine?
No, I don't anymore. I used to when I sold some of the Copper Still or Copper Mountain products to them. I would physically go to those stores, but I'm no longer doing that. So no, I don't at the store levels.
And was that with Wabash Valley or with D&E Spears?
D&E. So the first probably maybe 9 months or a year, I was servicing the Total Wine stores for the Copper Mountain items. And then Lance made a decision to move over to Crossroad Vintners and have them do it.
When they send the email to you, is the email only sent to you?
Yes,
Is that consistent?
yes.
When did they submit the order? I think you said it was Monday.
Yeah, Monday mornings. It's either Monday morning or Monday afternoon. So
And then how do you place the order with the manufacturer or importer?
So I will, like I said, pull together an inventory or an invoice, PO, if you will, for each individual supplier. The second component of that, because it's all done on an Excel spreadsheet, will be exactly aggregated orders according to each store. So let's take Deutsch, for example. It will have, here's the total order. I need 25 cases of XYZ wine, for example. Then on the second spreadsheet, it will show exactly how those 25 cases are broken down by each 5 stores. So they can, when it's being packaged at the individual warehouse, it's all packaged together by each store. And so once I get that, then I will send an email to Deutsch, Park Street, Clay Street, Home Entry, usually Tuesday morning, straight off to them. And then I'm not sure exactly their process as far as when it gets shipped to or sent to the warehouse and packaged and all that.
We've heard a lot today about sort of on-demand manufacturing. The products you're getting from Deutsche Park Street and are those on demand, or is that stored in the warehouse at the time you order it, if you know?
As far as from my warehouse or from the warehouse in New Jersey?
The warehouse in New Jersey or Florida?
I couldn't tell you. I would assume they probably, as a supplier, keeps more inventory because they're dealing with multiple locations. Because I know, for example, Deutsche here, I think they sell some products to RNDC or Glacier or Southern here as well. So they have different products going to different states. So I can't speak educated as far as exactly how they're operational. I'm assuming that they probably keep some on the floor.
And do you send that purchase order by email?
Yes.
To each supplier?
Yes.
When does the supplier invoice you for the product?
I will get it the following, usually Tuesday or Wednesday is when I get an invoice from them. As far as once I've received the product and on that following Monday
And how do you receive the invoice?
through email.
How do you pay that invoice?
It's an ACH to their bank.
Okay, from your bank?
Yeah, from out of my checking account or business account, if you will.
And that's an account in the name D&E Spirits?
Yes, through Huntington Bank.
When do you pay that invoice?
Usually it's within 7 days of receiving the invoice. So a couple of them I think are a little bit longer. I think Deutsche is like the second Friday afterwards is when I pay them.
Is there shrinkage or breakage of the products that are being transported from out of state to your warehouse?
Typically, there's very little. Again, it's the way we were receiving product is a little different than what you might think as far as when a product comes in, it's completely wrapped for that particular store. So the way it's being transported, it's almost impossible unless the tank, the truck tips over or something like that, because there's such little room in between the pallets on there. And so they're stacked right next to each other. So I'd say there's probably been 4 occasions where there's been an issue of shrinkage, and usually it's me breaking it, not the trucking company.
Who owns the product while it's in transport?
Technically, because they arranged the trucking, it would still be the particular suppliers. So once it arrives at my door, then I take ownership of it.
And then if something breaks in transport, how do you account for that back to the supplier?
I would send them an email, taking a picture of what exactly broke or what the situation was. Because sometimes it would be on a trucking situation that they were going to be responsible for it versus either myself or the supplier, depending on how the trucking company handled it. But we'll take a picture of it, send it back. I'll adjust my invoice going to that particular store for the product that's damaged. And then same thing will happen from the supplier standpoint until it's figured out exactly who's responsible for it.
And what is your understanding of the agreement on who does take responsibility for that?
Usually depends on the situation. Like I said, I've been known to break cases, trying to ram a pallet jack underneath and I'll break a case or something. So that's my responsibility. Now, if it comes into me already broken, which it's pretty easy to tell, when you open the back doors, you can smell the alcohol leaking. So at that point, we'll start kind of looking at, okay, is there, just one case, one bottle, or we got a serious issue inside the truck? At that point, then we'll figure out who the distributor or the supplier is, and then start working through them as far as filing a claim, either with the trucking company or with them responsible the way it was loaded, whatever the case may be.
How do you track the excise taxes owed?
As far as,
The Indiana state excise taxes?
So when I get my invoices from my each distributor, it has exactly how much gallons were brought in by each product. And so I total up because I pay on, spirit and wine tax. I'll go into the INDON or In Time website, put in every invoice that I've received for that month of every supplier, the date, what it was, the quantity amount, and then allow it to populate it and then pay the excise tax each month.
So when do you actually receive the shipments?
Every Monday morning.
So orders are placed on a Monday and you receive them the
Following
following
Monday.
Monday.
Yes.
Who delivers the shipments to you?
I contract with a company called Albridge. They're a huge logistics company out of Florida. They will, in the past, coming out of New Jersey, it was Pride Trucking. Now it's Trans Am Trucking, which is who's been doing it out of Florida. And they will transport to me. And I know there's been some issues about a citation I received with regards to one of my permits or my trucks not having a permit, and that was a mistake. That was on me. I did not clarify enough with my trucking company to make sure, or my brokerage to make sure that the trucking company's coming here. Because almost nobody operates directly with trucking companies. They're all done through brokers. C.H. Robinson was mentioned earlier. Albridge, which is who I deal with, they're all logistics company that sets up trucking. And so I really made a conscious effort. And I know the 2 or 3 times that excise has stopped my trucks in the last year, they've all had permits since then. So Trans Am is the one who now comes to me all the time.
Have you ever contracted with C.H. Robinson or worked with them?
Oh, yeah.
Secure the
C.H. Robinson, Alden Bridge, all of them. So, yeah.
How does the carrier invoice you?
It gets sent through, so I brought copies so you can see exactly of all the different ones, but they just invoice me like everybody else does. Send me an email for the trucks that are being shipped in.
And how do you pay the invoice after they invoice?
Same thing, ACH.
All right, so now you've received the shipment on a Monday.
Yes.
Describe to us how it arrives at your facility. When you open the truck doors, what do you see?
So there'll be anywhere from 18 to 20 pallets, all wrapped in blue paper or blue saran wrap. Saran wrap's not the right word, but plastic wrap. It will come into my back dock. We'll unload it, completely unload it, at which time I will take a picture of the empty truck parked to my dock, which I've done for the last 2.5 years. You're more than welcome to see them if you'd like to. I can download all the pictures to verify that I unloaded. We arrange all the paperwork, sign all the bill of ladings for the trucking coming into me, sign the invoices going to the particular stores, because usually there's either 2 or 3 stores on a truck, because I usually receive 2 trucks a week. Align it so that exactly goes back on to how it's going to be delivered. Give all the paperwork to the driver. We reload the truck. We seal the doors. We seal it with a new seal on the door, and then it heads off to the store. And I would like, if I may, I know there's been allegations made that says I did not unload trucks. I believe a 1.5 years ago, this was all resolved. Because I sent video to the commission, sent video. I know excise was out twice watching me unload, because they assumed that it would take me 4 hours to unload a truck. When there's 2 of us there, it takes us about 21 minutes to unload and reload. We're using electric pallet jacks, so, I just want to make sure that it's clear that I've unloaded the truck from day one per Indiana law, so.
You said when there are 2 of us there.
Yes.
Who else would be there with you?
A guy named Larry Miller, I'm sorry.
And he's an employee of yours?
No, I just contract with him to be there on Mondays, because he's only there on Mondays to help me unload. And then from time to time, he will go down to best and pick up products, I'll lease a truck through Penske right there at 25th and Post. And he will go down and pick up product to be brought back up.
When do you invoice Total Wine?
I invoice them first thing Monday morning. So I usually do it from my house as I'm getting ready to leave to head to the warehouse. So by that point, I will have not had any changes or anything according to any one of my suppliers. So I will get an update if there's any changes that need to be made, if there are any outages. Then from their purchase order, I'll adjust it to what the invoice is going to be. But I typically do it first thing Monday morning before I head to the warehouse. So usually around 6:30 before I head in.
Do you then pay the carrier to continue transporting from your warehouse to Total Wine?
Yes. So it's all hit on mileage and how many cases and everything like that. That's why it's fairly easy to determine exactly what that cost is going to be for freight, because it's the same distance and typically the same amount. Now, occasionally there might be 3 trucks or type of thing, but again, it's pretty standard as far as how much that freight's going to be.
When does Total Wine take ownership of the product?
When it arrives at their back door.
So we can do this in sort of an orderly fashion. Do you have any questions about the process to this point of it getting to the warehouse?
When you started, how many employees did you have? Dean,
Just myself,
said were you?
Just two.
What is the most employees you've had?
just one.
You have contracting services then?
I do with Larry, yes.
That's what I'm.
Yeah, yeah.
So you said others have said it takes 4 hours to empty a truck, but you can do it in 21.
And Excise was there and watched me and videotaped me. So yeah, I believe they can verify as to how long it takes me to unload and reload a truck.
When you do your billing and other things, sounds like Monday's a busy day.
It is.
And when do you check then to see that you've been paid? So you send the bill out, you said they paid usually in a week.
No, usually they will pay me they'll usually initiate an ACH on Tuesday from getting the invoice on Monday. So usually it's either late Tuesday or Wednesday I will get
So
paid.
they pay me immediately.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And when do you reconcile on that?
When I pay as far as,
When you send the bill and when you get the money, and you say it's a couple days. but
Yeah.
Somebody has to sit down and reconcile.
oh yeah, I do that. It only takes, again, 35, 40 minutes to reconcile because I only have very few payments and bills coming in and out. So,
Okay. The location that the product comes to, where is that?
it's up on 33rd Street, 8432, East
Yeah.
33rd Street.
You heard that address before, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, so it's a warehouse district right there off Post Road, right across from the IFD Training Center.
And approximately how many square feet?
About 2,700.
Ballpark, how many pallets would that hold? I don't know how tall it is, I know.
Yeah, because I don't have a forklift, so I couldn't stack on top. So you're probably talking, if you filled it in completely without any movement, maybe 50, probably 40 or so on both sides with still having a walkway down the middle.
How much does a typical truck hold?
Usually about 18 pallets, 18 to 20, depending on the weight.
So there's plenty of room. Do you store other products there?
I have the Copper Mountain products that I store there, yeah.
And how many pallets do they typically keep?
15 to 18 usually.
I think the gentleman indicated he had recognized something looked like it was a year old. Could that be?
Yeah, there's some products in there that I took over from Wabash when I bought their assets that had been sitting out there. I think he was referring to when Wilbur was talking about private labeling. So we did a fire breather, which was a cinnamon whiskey for a gentleman up in Marion. We did there was another lemon shake up that we did Elite Wheat for Elite Beverage here. So there were some leftover bottles, some leftover cases, those type of things that didn't sell.
Is it fair to state, and I'm assuming a great deal of this, that you only keep at your warehouse long enough to transport out? So they come in, they go out right away. You
Yes.
don't really store anything there of your price. You may store for Copper Mountain.
Right.
But you don't store any, you have no inventory.
Virtually no
It's there
inventory.
overnight, is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay, for keeping with that, I'll stop there.
Questions up to this point?
I assume that's what you meant, pursuant to his last question. When you say they bring the product to your location, you clear it and you send it to Big Red. So
So totally.
based on your testimony, it's like within an hour, it's in and out.
Yes.
There was a reference, I believe you said that Deutsch originally set a territory.
That was at Wabash. There was a territory set back with when Wabash was getting started, working with Deutsch and everything. I believe there was some sort of contract or some sort of territorial agreement signed to limit that space as to where those Deutsch products could be sold out of. But as far as myself, I don't have any type of contracts or any type of territorial agreements.
But at one point, at least as I recall, reading through things, early on, in your arrangement with Total Wine, when you got contacted by another retailer, you defended not selling them product because they were outside your territory, which was the parking lot. Is that correct?
That was back at Wabash, yes. Because that was my understanding at the time that that's how the agreements were. Because again, I wasn't sure, I've never dealt with agreements as far as territorial agreements. So I didn't know what you could and could not do. So I was instructed by Bob Kersey, the owner at the time of Wabash, to not do anything until he figured out what was going on with the contract as far as territorials were concerned.
And that was Deutsch, but what about the other suppliers? They glommed on to the same territory?
No. As far as I know, there weren't any type of territorial agreements with them.
And why is it you distribute only to 5 TW locations in Indiana?
For me, it's just pure economics. I know people talk today about, well, don't you want more stores? Don't you want more of that? I'm not in a position to be able to do that. I'm not in a position to have $1 million worth of inventory on my floor. You know, I'm not an RNDC, I'm not a Southern, I'm not any of these guys. I can't afford to have products sitting on my floor and hope that somebody's gonna call and place an order. And somebody might well say, well, hey, I'm gonna order 800 cases. Okay, well, this week you might order this 800 cases. Next week, it might be a totally different 800 cases. The week after that might be 800 totally different cases.
But if you can turn it around in 42 minutes,
Yeah,
that's not a problem with inventory control.
it depends on how long they order and how long they want it. So right now, my business's model is real-time inventory. You know, I know exactly what Total Wine is gonna place an order for, and I know they're gonna want it in 1 week, and I know the turnaround time that I can do it in. And so, you know, if I were to look at other options, I might have to get trucks, I might have to get more employees. And so for right now, would I like to grow? Yes, I would love to grow. You know, would I love to be as big as an RNDC? Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. You know, I've owned restaurants and bars here in Indiana. I love to grow my business. But right now, it just does not work for me to go outside of what's done. And when we started this, you know, I spoke with Josh here, the former prosecutor. I relied on my legal counsel to say, hey, you know, is this what we did? And from advice from Josh, legal counsel, this is how we set it up.
And as far as you said, the way it's set up, you said that the order is put in by Total Wine, and then it's broken down into what goes to what store. Who decides how much goes to what store?
Well, they will. So when they send me the order, they're like, okay, we want X amount going to, we need XYZ rum. We need 3 cases going to the North store, 3 cases going to this store, those type of things. So again, I take that, break it down by particular suppliers and send it off so they have an overall order, and then they have an order for each individual stores as to what needs to be filled from those each suppliers.
I have no further questions.
I have a couple more up to this point. In the future, will you add new customers?
Potentially, yes. Yes. You know, again, I just have to look, to make sure it makes economically sense for me.
Okay, and that, those trucks that you turn around in 42 minutes, how many how many cases on average does that truck have?
Somewhere around between 1,100 and 1,300 cases per truck.
So you can get those 800 cases in and out in an hour.
Potentially, yes.
What's the value of each case? Average.
$80, $90.
How will retailers know if you're adding new customers?
I would probably reach out to the ones that, you know, that I know obviously are here today that want to look at products. You know, I know one of the questions I asked when it comes to co-op, and I asked this to Strauss or one of the other gentlemen, do I have a legal right to sell to co-ops? And the answer is no, because according to him, I'm not required to by law. I don't know if that's true or not. We haven't discussed it because I'm not adding new customers.
That's two different questions.
Yeah.
Whether you're required to or whether
Yeah.
you can.
Right.
You said, you asked if you can.
No, I asked if I was required to. If I was required by law to sell to a co-op. And I was informed, no, I was not. And then there comes a question about, you know, what defines a parking lot? Is that a licensed premise? So again, you know, I'm at where I'm at right now. Do I want to continue to grow? Yes. When? I don't know. I can't give you an answer to say, hey, in 6 months, I'll add new customers, 2 years. I don't know.
What will you look for? Take long.
How I can economically do it, and if I can make sure that with my trucking companies, because if I want to change my business model, I'm going to have to add trucks. So how much is that going to affect? How is that going to offset the trucking costs of it right now?
Are you adding trucks or contracting?
Contracting.
Yeah, so you're not adding trucks.
If I decide to go and add more customers, I might have to add trucks. So it is an
You don't
expense.
have any trucks right now.
No, I don't. That's what I'm saying. I might have to add them. Yes, absolutely. So, you know, I can't, if you're asking me to give you an answer as to when, I don't know.
I didn't ask you that. I asked you what.
No, she did. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I actually asked you, how will the other industry members know that you've expanded?
I can't give you a good answer. I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I guess probably how customers know to talk to Middle Ape to get products, you know. I guess I would create a website and put it out there, you know, that they could come to the website and look at what's available.
Over the day, you just.
Yeah.
We hate to have you come back another day, but we also don't want to rush through Mr. Stewart's testimony. We want to give you an opportunity to
Yeah.
be heard, answer the questions. I have another page and a half of questions. And then, Mr. Stewart, you may have things you just want to provide to us that we haven't asked about.
He's not the last witness either, right?
Well, potentially not. I think what we said at the beginning was we would digest what we've learned today and then determine if we need other witnesses and who those would be. So with that, I think we start looking at another date. And I think at this point, the significant piece would be when the commission is available and when, Mr. Stewart is available.
You mentioned giving Mr. Stewart the opportunity to add the information that he hadn't been questioned about. Will we be able to do that in written form as well as testimony when we come back here? I'm asking because if the commission will accept additional written information and testimony, documents and so forth to supplement what's been asked about, and maybe other things we want you to know. I don't want to start working with my client on that if it's gonna be for nothing.
I think that was contemplated in the notice of the investigatory hearing that we would also receive written comment. And I don't think there's anything, if you're testifying, you can't also submit written. Counsel?
There's no prohibition.
Yeah.
We've already received written testimony anyway, so.
Now, understand that your written statements may solicit or may generate more questions from the commission.
So long as it's presented a couple of days before the next hearing, so there's an opportunity for the commissioners to read. Is that okay?
Fair enough.
So we won't establish that date
Yeah,
now, or
Can I suggest we start off with the, like we did today, a Tuesday afternoon
that works.
as a start? I don't care which Tuesday, but this work for everybody to be here on a Tuesday. He's with you. Mr. Stewart has a lot to do on Monday, so we certainly don't want on Monday.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that.
And for everyone else, we appreciate you testifying in person. We will have the stream available if you want to attend virtually next time or in person next time.
Okay, we used to have to call the office to see what our computer said, calendar had. And
computer. Open paper,
paper pen.
mhm.
papyrus.
All right, I don't know if this is too soon, but we don't have any meetings, commission or escrow next Tuesday.
Stand with, thing.
All right,
No, I've got a revocation here in the account. I do them both days. If, I
it's
know.
allowed revocations next week.
How about the 19th? On Thursday, executives.
Yeah.
I will be at a CLE on the 19th.
All I can see is.
Yeah. It's the 24 Legal and Ethics Conference hosted by.
She asked you that, that's all right, I think so. Keep us ethical.
Unless, I
You
mean,
can't just tell anyone.
How are you?
yeah, Chris could be
I
here.
can do Ashley's job.
if you're comfortable with that.
I'm fine with that.
All right, so our proposal is Tuesday, November 19th at 1 PM.
Works for me. Works for me though.
Did you say one?
I figure 1,
Okay,
we started at 1 and today we started at 1 and here we are at 4:30, so. All right, and Ashley, figure out if we need to do a supplemental notice on that and what that looks like. Yep, I'll get that taken care of.
Adjourn.
And with that, we will adjourn.
thank you all for your
Thank you.
patience.
Thank you all.
Thank you.